The air was loud with trumpets, laughter, and flashing cameras as red, white, and blue banners danced above Constitution Avenue. It was supposed to be a celebration, Donald Trump's 79th birthday parade. The crowd chanted his name. Giant golden 79 balloons floated behind the stage. Reporters fought for angles. Then a black SUV rolled up slowly. Out stepped Captain Ibrahim Traoré, dressed sharply in a deep olive uniform, his face unreadable. Traoré walked calmly toward the platform. Though invited as a diplomatic guest, few expected him to actually attend, and none expected what was about to happen. As Trump raised his hand to welcome him with a showman's smile, Traoré didn't shake it. He turned slightly, looked into the crowd, then into the nearest camera, and simply said, "Before I shake any hand, I must speak a truth the world has forgotten." The crowd hushed. Reporters froze. The wind even seemed to pause. Trump's smile twitched. No one understood what was coming, but the entire world right then was watching. And in that strange silence, something shifted. Something historic was about to happen. The band stopped. The confetti guns misfired. Traoré slowly stepped to the microphone. His voice, calm, deep, and heavy, pierced through the chaos. "I stand here not as a politician, but as the son of a woman who was once told her pain didn't matter. I come from a land where children learn to bury their parents by age 10, while the world sends thoughts but no justice." The audience fell silent. One Trump aide tried to interrupt, but Trump, for reasons unknown, raised his hand for silence. Tree continued, "Today I came to say African dignity is not a gift we beg for. It's a birthright, and no celebration, no parade, no power can erase our truth." Some in the crowd looked away. Some stared with wide, confused eyes. Others whispered, but none dared move. Even the birthday banners behind Trump now looked out of place. Traoré's presence had shifted the mood of an entire parade. And then, unexpectedly, he pulled something from his jacket. A small photo. He held it up to the cameras and the world gasped. The image was worn, creased, and color faded. But it showed a woman, dark-skinned, wrinkled and beautiful, kneeling in the dirt, crying. "She was my mother," Traoré said, voice shaking for the first time. "This photo was taken after she lost her only sister because her village had no doctor, no clean water, no help." He looked directly at Trump, then at the cheering supporters. "She used to believe that America could change the world until she learned America changes only what benefits America." Gasps. A few people booed. Some clapped. Cameras spun in every direction. Traoré didn't flinch. "I'm not here to insult. I'm here to ask. Why must our dignity always be the cost of your comfort?" Trump's jaw clenched. His hand dropped. Even he looked rattled. And somewhere deep in the audience, a woman began to cry. Not for politics, but because for the first time in a long time, someone on that stage was telling the raw truth without fear. The world was no longer watching a birthday parade. It was watching a reckoning. As Captain Traoré gently folded the old photo and slipped it back into his jacket, the silence in the crowd thickened. No drums, no music, just the sound of birds overhead and heavy breathing from stunned spectators. Then it happened. A woman in the front row, elderly, white-haired, wearing Arid, "Make America Great Again" cap, slowly stood up. She didn't shout. She didn't clap. She just looked at Traoré and whispered, "I'm sorry. We never knew." One tear rolled down her cheek. A CNN camera caught it. The image went viral in minutes. Trump looked confused, angry, but also oddly quiet. He stepped slightly back from the microphone. Traoré remained steady. "My mission today," he said gently, "is not to humiliate anyone. It's to remind the world that silence has a cost, and that cost was my mother." Somewhere in the back, a child asked, "Mom, why is everyone so sad?" The mother couldn't answer. This was no longer a parade. It was a funeral for ignorance, and Traoré had become the quiet preacher, mourning every forgotten village, with every calm word. But the storm hadn't even started yet. As Traoré stepped back from the microphone, there was movement behind the stage. Secret Service agents leaned into their earpieces. Two shifted closer to Trump. Something was wrong. Traoré noticed but showed no fear. He gently placed his hand on the edge of the podium, looked into the sea of cameras and said, "There are truths people have tried to keep buried, but today I dig one up." He then pulled out a folded letter, aged, frayed at the edges. He raised it high, letting the media zoom in. This was written by a U.S. oil company to a dictator in West Africa. It promised weapons in exchange for silence. Trump's face twitched. "That dictator killed over 30,000 of his own people," Traoré said. "One of them was my cousin." The crowd gasped. A woman fainted. A Secret Service agent subtly stepped between Trump and Traoré. Still, Traoré didn't flinch. And guess what? That company never faced justice. At that moment, a low, confused whisper rippled through the crowd like a wave. "Why is no one stopping him?" someone muttered. But deep down they knew why. The truth once spoken is more dangerous than any bullet. And Traoré had just loaded a cannon. Melania Trump sat beside the former president on the raised stage, elegant, poised, unreadable until now. As Traoré held that letter in his hand, her expression changed. First confusion, then concern, then something raw, something human. She leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Something." Trump didn't respond. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. The cameras caught it, the flicker in Heary's, a flicker of recognition. Had she seen that letter before? Traoré noticed. He locked eyes with her for a brief moment, not with anger, but a kind of unspoken understanding. "Some people on this stage," he said slowly, "have seen the truth, but were forced to live in silence." Melania looked away. The crowd murmured. "Louder now. My mother died nameless." Traoré continued. "But today, her story is spoken on American soil. Her voice no echoes between your skyscrapers." The silence that followed was unbearable. One child cried. Another elderly man took off his Trump 2024 button and placed it in his pocket, ashamed. The truth had no accent, no border, no side. And somehow, with just a few words, Traoré had done what no weapon ever could. He had made America free, and he was just getting started. Traoré's voice grew softer now, almost like a lullaby. But his words were anything but gentle. "Before I became a soldier, I was a brother. I had a little brother named Adu." He paused. The name lingered in the summer air. "He died in a river trying to fetch water for our mother. He was 9. Gasps from the audience. A woman clutched her chest. The river was poisoned by foreign mining waste. The same company that sponsored a campaign in this country 2 years ago. He didn't need to name it. The journalists already knew. They made billions. My brother's funeral cost $12. We buried him in the same shirt he wore to school. Even the cameras seemed to tremble." Traoré reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded white cloth, the torn piece of that shirt. He held it up, insolence. A gentle breeze caught the edge of the fabric. "This isn't politics," he said. "This is pain. You just never had to see it." Trump stared, now visibly uncomfortable. Even the Secret Service didn't move. And somewhere in the back, a woman sobbed openly. America was listening now, and for the first time it couldn't look away. As Traoré stood with the fabric in his hand, the giant Trump 79 birthday banner hanging above began to shift. Wind picked up suddenly. The rope snapped. The banner dropped. Half the letters collapsed awkwardly over the side of the stage, leaving only the word truth visible from the crowd's angle. It was pure coincidence, but it felt like a message from something bigger. The crowd gasped. Phones snapped photos like wildfire. Even the conservative media didn't know how to spin what was happening. Traoré slowly looked back at the fallen banner, then turned to face Trump. "I didn't come here to ruin your birthday, Mr. Trump," he said gently. "But maybe the truth chose this day for a reason." Trump said nothing. A military marching band had been scheduled to perform at that exact moment. The conductor quietly lowered his baton. No one wanted to interrupt what was unfolding. This wasn't a parade anymore. It was history, live and raw. Children on their parents' shoulders watched with wide eyes. Even some of Trump's supporters, the loudest ones, now sat quietly, hands clasped, unsure what to feel. "If you can hear me," Traoré said to the world, "remember my brother's name." For nearly 20 minutes, Trump had been silent, eyes locked, jaw tight. But now, As Traoré stepped back and the wind grew still, Trump took one step toward the microphone. The crowd held its breath. He cleared his throat. His voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was unsure. That was powerful. He paused, looked at this team, looked at Melania. I didn't know that story about his brother. I didn't know about that letter. Maybe Iz should have. Some people in the crowd clapped. Others waited, stunned. Trump turned to Traoré. You came here and told the truth. And even if I don't agree with everything, maybe the world needs more of that. Gasps rippled across the crowd. It wasn't a surrender. It wasn't an apology. But it was the closest thing to humility Trump had ever shown. And the world saw it. Traoré nodded. Once, no smile, just quiet dignity. Truth, he said softly, isn't meant to be agreed with. It's meant to be faced. CNN's breaking banner read. Traoré breaks, silence. Trump responds with unexpected words. But the real shift hadn't happened on screen. It had happened inside the people watching who were now holding back tears. Traoré stood calmly, eyes locked with the world, and said, There's a village in northern Burkina Faso called Tube. He paused, let the name sit. It's no longer on the map. It's not in any database because last year, foreign-act mercenaries raided it in search of lithium beneath the ground. They burned everything. They shot families. And when they left, all that remained were ashes. You could hear sniffles now, even among the camera crews. My uncle was a school teacher there, hetawed under a tree with a broken chalkboard. His last message on his phone said, They are coming. Protect the children. Traoré pulled out a laminated photo. It showed a scorched classroom and a pair of tiny sandals lying beside a torn math book. No news covered it. No nation condemned it. But I remember. Trump looked down. Some members of his staff whispered nervously, clearly shaken. A black child sitting on his father's shoulders wiped his eyes. We talk of global unity, Traoré continued. But what unity lets children die while the world signs deals for minerals? He turned slightly, looked into the camera. Tube lived. Tube mattered. Sayet's name. And tens of thousands online whispered it. A sudden breeze swept through the parade grounds again. Traoré slowly stepped down from the podium and walked toward the front row where a little American boy was waving a small paper flag. The boy looked no older than 6. Traoré knelt. What's your name? Liam, the boy replied. That flag, did your dad give it to you? The boy paused, looked down. No. My dad was a soldier. He died last year. My mom says he went to Africa, but he never came back. The entire crowd fell into a suffocating silence. Trump's face dropped. Melania covered her mouth. Did they tell you why? Traoré asked softly. No. They just said he died serving freedom. Traoré nodded. He gently placed his hand on the boy's shoulder and stood. Sometimes both sides lose fathers, and sometimes both sides are just used. The boy's mother wiped her tears as her son kept waving the little flag, now damp, from his fingers. That image, the African captain beside the American child, both caught in wars they never started, exploded across the internet. It wasn't just a political moment anymore. It was a shared wound. Just as Traoré turned back toward the podium, CNN's live broadcast cut to commercial. Viewers screamed on social media, "What are they hiding? Why cut now? Let him speak." But what CNN dropped, TikTok picked up. Dozens of attendees had recorded the moment with Liam. Within minutes, clips were trending across the globe under hashtags like TR Truth at the parade and 2R Traoré Speaks. A young American veteran stitched the video with tears in his eyes. I served in Niger. Everything this man's saying, we saw it. We were told not to talk. Meanwhile, back at the parade, Traoré returned to the mic, not fazed. The truth doesn't need television. It just needs hearts. Then he added, You cannot silence a storm once it begins to rain. Somewhere backstage, a White House aide yelled into a headset, We're losing control of the narrative. But the truth had already escaped the gates, and millions were watching, not from TV, but from phones, subways, living rooms, crying, reflecting, reposting. What started as a birthday had become a funeral for lies. And Ibrahim Traoré, he wasn't finished. He was just lighting the next match. As the wind swept through the stage, a young African student in the back row stood up. His name was Emmanuel. He wore a faded school blazer and held a small flag of Burkina Faso. Security moved quickly, assuming it was a protest. "Stop him!" someone shouted, but Traoré raised his hand. "Let the boy come." Silence returned. Emmanuel stepped forward, shaking. I just wanted you to know, sir. They almost didn't let me in with this flag. They said it might offend the theme of the event." The boy looked directly at Trump. "But my mother cried when you invited Captain Traoré. She said it was the first time someone like her was allowed to be seen." Traoré knelt and hugged him. "You carry more than a flag," he whispered. "You carry the right to be respected." The crowd, unsure just hours ago, now burst into applause. Melania Trump visibly wiped her tears. And as Emmanuel held his flag higher, CNN's camera panned back just in time to catch a new trending phrase on Twitter. "Let Africa be seen." Something bigger than politics was unfolding, and the world couldn't stop watching. Traoré reached into his coat, again, but this time he pulled out something different. A sealed letter worn at the edges, handwritten, torn envelope. This was written by a woman named Miriam, a mother from Ghana. He opened it slowly, reading word for word to the leaders of the free world. "My son died working in a mine that your company's funded. He was 14. He never saw a classroom. He never knew his worth. Please, if you won't bring justice, at least stop pretending you don't know." He paused. The page trembled in his fingers. "She died before this letter ever made it to the embassy. He held it up, so I brought it myself." The entire parade had gone completely silent. Even Fox News didn't interrupt. Trump stared, unable to look away. "Is speak today," Traoré said. "For Miriam, for Amadou, for the nameless children who became numbers in someone else's spreadsheet." The letter dropped from his hand, caught gently by the wind, floating past the podium like a ghost, finally free. It landed at Trump's feet. He didn't move, and the world wept. As the crowd sat in stunned stillness, a man rushed forward from the VIP section, whispering into Traoré's ear. Traoré's face changed. He stepped back to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've just received a call from a community in eastern Mali." He looked out at the sea of faces. "There was a mining accident. Children are trapped beneath rubble. The same multinational company responsible is here today. They're a parade sponsor." Murmurs, gasps, journalists scrambling for confirmation. "They won't allow cameras. They've blocked phone signals, but they didn't block me." He turned, eyes fixed on the camera. "To the families watching, we hear you. You are not forgotten." Then something unexpected. He handed the phone to Trump. "Sir, would you like to speak to them, or will silence be the answer again?" Trump didn't take the phone. The line was still open. You could hear faint cries. A woman screaming for her son. "This is not about party," Traoré said, "or power. This is about humanity." And in that moment, millions online began donating, tweeting, organizing, rescue teams. Not because of a campaign, but because of one voice that refused to be silenced. For hours, Trump had remained mostly silent, stunned, unsure, caught in a storm he didn't expect on his birthday. But now, after the boy with the flag, the mother's letter, and the phone call from Mali, something shifted. He stepped forward. The crowd went tense. "Captain Traoré," Trump began, "I didn't expect this." Traoré stood calmly, hands folded. Trump glanced at the cameras, then the letter at his feet. "You said something that hit me," Trump continued, "about dignity, about not being invisible." He turned to the crowd struggling. "Maybe I forgot that. Maybe a lot of us did." You could hear a pin drop. "So today, I want to say this. To you and to every African child watching. We see you and we hear you." The room exploded in gasps. Traoré didn't smile, but his eyes softened. Melania stood clapping slowly. The crowd joined her, and for the first time, Traoré nodded. It wasn't agreement. It was acknowledgement of a moment that finally mattered. History had been made, but something even more powerful was still coming. As the applause faded, Traoré stepped down from the stage and walked quietly to the back of the room. There stood a frail, elderly African-American man in a wheelchair, wearing a tattered military jacket with medals barely hanging on. "Captain," the man whispered, "I served in Vietnam, lost my leg, came back to a country that never saluted me." Traoré knelt beside him, gently taking his hand. "I've watched every war," the old soldier said, voice breaking. "But a day I saw a real fight. Not with bullets, but with truth." Tears fell from his eyes and then from Traoré's. "Thank you for standing for us, for reminding the world that our pain is not just history, it's now." The cameras captured the hug between them. No words were needed anymore. Twitter exploded again. A single hug silenced centuries, one post read. All across the world, from Nigeria to Haiti, South Africa to Chicago, families sat in front of their screens in tears, and for the first time in a long time they felt seen. As the sun set over Washington, D.C., the parade continued. But the energy had changed forever. Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't wait for the closing speeches. He walked toward the exit quietly, away from the cameras, the banners, the fireworks. A reporter chased after him, breathless. "Captain, why did you come if you didn't want the spotlight?" He stopped. "Because dignity isn't given in headlines," he replied. "It's earned in silence." With that, he stepped into his car. Inside the White House, Trump remained seated, staring at Miam's letter, still open on the desk, and outside, a sea of people raised African flags, not in protest, but in pride. That day wasn't about politics anymore. It was about voices rising from forgotten places, finally heard. If this story moved you, if a single word made you pause, if a tear rolled down your cheek while watching, please hit the like button. Drop a comment for every child who deserves to be seen. And subscribe not just to my channel, but to truth, dignity, and the power of stories that matter. Because sometimes one story can change the life